So it's officially here. After a year of being locked inside and having the NBA suspended, we have made it to the NBA playoffs of 2020. And without further ado, I don't think I need to give an intro to this. Let's just get straight into the playoff predictions. Obviously, if you enjoy the video, please help me out by hitting that like button, subscribe for NBA content if you're new. I'd actually love to hear what your playoff predictions are, so let me know them down below in the comment section. Let me know which team you think will win and in how many games they'll win the series by. And let's start it off with the first round predictions for the East and the West. We're going to start in the Western Conference. The first seed versus the 8th seed, Lakers versus Portland. Obviously the Portland Trailblazers had a tough run to get here, but they made it. They made it to the NBA playoffs, which is actually really exciting. Throughout this season, they've been quite disappointing. Obviously, they were one of the better teams last season, making it all the way to the Western Conference Finals, and this season, they haven't been able to replicate what they did last season. Nevertheless, they've made it to the playoffs, and once you're in the playoffs, that's all that really matters. They have a star player in Damian Lillard, an all-star caliber player in CJ McCollum. They've got Nurkic back from injury, who's a massive piece to this team. Whiteside played majority of the starting minutes this season at the center position when Nurkic was out, and now he's moved to the bench role, and that Nurkic and Whiteside combination could do some damage in the playoffs, but it's going to be interesting to see how this Trailblazers team matches up against the Lakers. Obviously, they don't have Trevor Ariza, which is a blow as they are matching up against LeBron James. It's still a great Portland Trailblazers lineup, with Damian Lillard pulling up from anywhere on the court. CJ McCollum, although injured, he's not significantly injured, and he's still able to play through his injury, which shouldn't affect him too much. Carmelo Anthony, he showed why he should be on an NBA roster this season, and he's really performed in clutch situations for this Trailblazers team. In saying that, this Lakers squad is just a great squad. Anthony Davis, when on his game, is a top 5 player in the league in my opinion. He's definitely to me the best power forward in the game. I don't think that should even be a question. And of course, if it's playoff time, that means LeBron will obviously step it up as he does every single season. With that said, I don't think it's going to be as easy as everyone is making it out to be. The Lakers still, in my opinion, have some issues that they haven't really resolved during the bubble. For example, their backcourt defense. I think losing Avery Bradley, who was a really vital piece to this Lakers team, may hurt them when trying to guard a player like Damian Lillard or CJ McCollum, so that may be a little bit tough. Obviously, they're going to get Rondo back, but Rondo isn't 2010 Rondo anymore. This guy is getting older, and the Lakers may have some trouble defending guys like Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum. In saying that, they still have a great defensive lineup in Danny Green, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Dwight Howard, or JaVale McGee. And because they are a tall defensive lineup, it may have some effect on the Portland Trailblazers when trying to attack the rim. But really, I've got the Lakers in 6 games. I don't know if we'll even go to 6. It could even just go to 5 games, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if Dame went off in 1 or 2 games this series. The next series is the Oklahoma City Thunder versus the Houston Rockets, which is a really interesting series, and it may be the best series out of the first round. The Houston Rockets injury curse just doesn't seem to fall behind them. And Russell Westbrook isn't healthy going into this playoff matchup. And obviously, without Russell Westbrook, this creates a lot of problems for the Houston Rockets, who rely on Westbrook's attack to free up shooters on the outside. In addition, whilst James Harden is an MVP candidate, can he really lead this team to victories when he doesn't have a sidekick, and the outcome of the game really depends on if the rest of his teammates will be able to hit open shots from the outside. And the Oklahoma City Thunder, they have Chris Paul, who's an aging point guard but has really turned this franchise around. Shai Gilgeous, Steven Adams, Danilo Gallinari, Dennis Schroeder. It's a very nice roster with a lot of depth. And depth may be the killer for the Houston Rockets, who really don't have much depth on their roster. I personally don't believe that Westbrook's injury is too significant, but I do believe he could miss game 1 and potentially game 2, which is why I'm going to say that the Houston Rockets still win this series, but in 7 games. But really, it would not surprise me at all if the Oklahoma City Thunder went on to win this series. The next series in the Western Conference is the Denver Nuggets versus the Utah Jazz, and I believe this should be pretty easy for the Denver Nuggets. The Utah Jazz are one of the teams that I was really excited to see going into this season. They acquired Mike Conley, a great point guard with defensive capabilities, and he's a great offensive player as well. Well, in the past. And they also acquired Bogdanovic, who would help put the Utah Jazz into a tier that was really unmatched in the Western Conference, which had the Lakers, the Clippers, and to me, the Utah Jazz, along with the potential Houston Rockets, and maybe the Denver Nuggets. I had the Jazz above the Denver Nuggets going into the season, but obviously, the Denver Nuggets have a great talented roster, and without Bogdanovic and without Conley, it looks like the Utah Jazz won't be able to hold off against the Denver Nuggets, in my opinion, with Michael Porter really coming to his own in the bubble. Obviously, Nikola Jokic looks a lot better. His body looks like he'll be ready for the playoffs, and they have Jamal Murray back, along with some really nice depth on this Denver Nuggets team, and the Denver Nuggets could really surprise any team they face off against because they are so unique. But the Utah Jazz have really just been unlucky, and the bubble didn't do them very well this season. And whilst Donovan Mitchell is a great young player and Rudy Gobert is a nice defensive center, I just don't believe that this Utah Jazz team will be able to hold off against the Denver Nuggets, and you may see a trade at the end of the year with Donovan Mitchell or Rudy Gobert, as they don't seem to have the best relationship, and if the Utah Jazz get eliminated in the first round, this could potentially be a turning point for this franchise. And the last team in the Western Conference, the Clippers versus Dallas Mavericks. The Dallas Mavericks are a team that is very, very good. And that is because they have an MVP candidate in Luka Doncic. They still got Kristaps Porzingis, who is really coming to his own in the bubble. He's obviously worked his way into the NBA system after being out the league for so long with injury, and he's looking like a solid big man that he was always meant to be in New York, but now in Dallas, and he's a great fit alongside Luka Doncic. The thing about the Dallas Mavericks is they have the best overall offensive rating of all time. This year, the Mavericks finished the regular season with a 115.9 offensive rating, which is the best of all time, yet they haven't been able to clutch out games, and they're actually the 5th worst offense in clutch situations. Which means if the Dallas Mavericks can play well, I wouldn't be surprised if they get a game or two against the Los Angeles Clippers. But in the end, with the Clippers getting Harrell back, Lou Williams has started to get a few more games under his belt, and obviously Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, the 2 stars of the Clippers. I just think the Clippers have too much depth for this team, but I don't believe the Dallas Mavericks will go down easy, and it would not surprise me at all if this series went to 7 games, but I'm going to say that the Clippers win in 6. And now the Eastern Conference, which I really don't believe is anything like the Western Conference. I wouldn't be surprised if the Thunder beat the Rockets, or if the Jazz beat the Nuggets. Like, I don't expect it, but it wouldn't ultimately surprise me. But in the Eastern Conference, if the Magic beat the Bucks, or the Pacers beat the Heat, the 76ers without Ben Simmons beat the Boston Celtics, or the Nets beat the Raptors without Kyrie, Dinwiddie, DeAndre Jordan, that would surprise me. So the West looks tough. But the East, I believe the first round should be quite simple. The Bucks, to me, against the Magic, I definitely believe the Bucks will win this series very easy. 4 games, maybe 5 games if the Magic can sneak a game, but I believe it will be a sweep. The Bucks have dominated all season. They've had the best record. They'll have the MVP and possibly Defensive Player of the Year in one season. Giannis has been unstoppable. Chris Middleton has played like an all-star this season and is definitely the perfect sidekick for Giannis. All he has to do is play the way that he's played all season long, and the Bucks should realistically end up in the NBA Finals. And with the Magic not having Jonathan Isaac, who was a great defensive player that could potentially match up against Giannis, I think the Bucks will win this series very easy in a sweep. But really, we know that Giannis will most likely play the way he's played all year. Chris Middleton is the one that I'm depending on to have a big postseason, because without him, I don't believe the Bucks can actually make it to the NBA Finals. I feel like there's a lot of other teams coming for that throne in the Eastern Conference with the Miami Heat, Boston Celtics, Toronto Raptors, who are all capable of beating the Bucks if Middleton doesn't perform. The Miami Heat versus the Indiana Pacers, that was also seen as a very interesting matchup throughout the regular season with the whole Jimmy Butler, TJ Warren saga. But in the end, without Sabonis, TJ Warren has also suffered with injury and actually has the same injury that has caused Sabonis to miss the playoffs. And obviously Victor Oladipo isn't himself the way he was before his injury, so as a Heat fan, it would really disappoint me if we were to lose this series. But I don't think the Indiana Pacers are a bad team, so I will say that Indiana will get a game or 2. I will actually say that the Heat win this series in 6 games. Jimmy Butler should play his role. He should lock up TJ Warren. And of course, the Miami Heat have beaten the Indiana Pacers all season except for last game, which really wasn't anything because Miami didn't have their whole starting lineup or many of their bench players actually in the lineup. So the Miami Heat should win this comfortably. They have a great defensive team. Bam, Jimmy, Andre Iguodala, Jay Crowder, and their overall defensive scheme looks very good this season. They've been able to knock off teams like the Bucks, the Sixers, the Celtics, the Raptors. They've been able to beat all the teams in the Eastern Conference, which gives me a lot of hope going into these playoffs as well. The Celtics versus 76ers. This series would have been so much fun to watch if Ben Simmons wasn't injured. A Defensive Player of the Year candidate, and obviously it would have been a very good matchup to see him versus Tatum. But in the end, to me, without Ben Simmons, I just don't think the Philadelphia 76ers have enough to win this series. Joel Embiid will probably go off for a game or two. Tobias Harris may go off for 30 to 40 points in a game. Josh Richardson should play some good defense, but in the end, I think the Celtics have too much star power with Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Kemba Walker. I feel like the Celtics should win this series in 6 games, but Joel Embiid could definitely go off in a few games, and that could be tough to stop because the Celtics don't really have anyone to match up against Joel Embiid. Their interior defense is pretty bad, and they have Al Horford. Joel Embiid is one of the best big men in the game, so if Tobias Harris gets hot in 1 or 2 games and they can't stop Joel Embiid or Al Horford in the paint, it could be a tougher matchup than people think, but I still have the Boston Celtics in 6 games. And then lastly, the Brooklyn Nets versus the Toronto Raptors. I believe it should be a clean sweep. The Nets have done really well during this bubble, with obviously losing majority of their team. Karis LeVert looks like a great player for the future. Same with Jared Allen, but I just don't believe without Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, DeAndre Jordan, Spencer Dinwiddie, it's just a tough matchup. And that will be very exciting to watch next season, but this season I've got the Toronto Raptors in a sweep. Let me know down below what your playoff bracket looks like for the first round. If you guys could hit that like button, let's aim for 1,000 likes. That would be absolutely amazing. Subscribe for NBA content every single week and hit that notification button so you never miss an upload. It's been your boy Nick Smith. I'll catch you in my next one. Peace.